eradicated. Unfortunately, however, that's not the case. These things are, as I tried to outline in the talk, very deeply rooted within Islamic teaching. And there was never a rejection of the ideologies that fueled those Islamic conquests of the past. There was never a reformation or a repudiation of the idea that Muslims must fight in order to establish the hegemony of Islamic law. What happened was, in the colonial period, and a few centuries preceding the colonial period, because of the weakness of the Ottoman Empire, the jihad became quiescent, or relatively quiescent, with some notable exceptions. And it was simply not possible. The Islamic world was not strong enough to pursue it. But they never rejected it as a principle. And then Saudi oil billions and the Khomeini revolution did once again make for the possibility that these things could be pursued. And that's why we're seeing them resurgent today. But it's exactly the same motion. It's exactly the same ideology. The second question was, I'm sorry.
Immigration.
Immigration,
what
yeah.
impact do you think?
Well, obviously, we don't want to do anything that would contradict the principles of freedom of religion that are enshrined in the Constitution. But as I have been explaining, there are political elements of Islam that I think can be addressed. I think one of the things that we could do very basically is revise the immigration application, revise visa applications and even applications for student study and so on, to ask very specific questions about the status of women, about the status of religious minorities, about living in a pluralistic society as equals with people who are not believers, and various questions of this kind. Actually, I've developed a draft of this. If I can interest any congressmen or senators in taking a look, just give me a call. But I think that that's how it can be tackled on a very specific basis. Not that we would expect true answers or honest answers to these questions, but once the questions were asked, then a false answer, a dishonest answer, would then become grounds for deportation if activity to the contrary of the answer followed.
Hello, Mr. Spencer.
Hello.
My name is Megan from Boston. You were bringing up that Muhammad is promoting practices such as child marriage, other such things. I was curious as to whether you think that Republican Congressman Mark Foley was perhaps under the influence of the evil teachings of Muhammad.
No. I never said that child molestation or pedophilia or anything of the kind was exclusively the province of Muslims. What I'm talking about is when you give this kind of behavior explicit sanction in religious texts, and according to the example of the founder of the religion, it becomes very much more difficult to eradicate. But just in case anyone is confused or concerned, I do not think that this kind of behavior is restricted to the Islamic world by any means, and I disapprove of it from Mark Foley or from anyone else.
David Black, Washington, D.C. The Protestant Reformation was a response to a perceived abuse of political power as much as it was a disagreement about theology. Are you saying that well, my question was going to be, so how do we foment the equivalent Reformation on the Muslim side? Or do you think it's impossible?
The Reformation in the Islamic world would have to be of a very different character. The Protestant Reformation, whether one is a Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox, the stated goal of the Protestant Reformation, in other words, however one may view it with approval or disapproval, was to get back to the original texts, to get back to the original teachings, to peel away all these things that had supposedly crept into Christianity over the centuries, and to get back to the basic thing. Now, whether or not they succeeded in that, whether or not that was a successful enterprise is a question for another day, but that was the intention. Unfortunately, there has already been a reformation of that kind within Islam. That is Wahhabism. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab was an 18th century reformer who had believed that various things that were un-Islamic had crept into the practice of Islam. And so he determined to remove them and to restrict the practice of Islam only to what the Quran clearly taught, what Muhammad clearly taught, and what had been practiced in the first 2 centuries after Muhammad. So that's a reformation. What we need here, because these doctrines are so deeply embedded within the texts, is more like a rejection of literalism, a retreat from literalism, a formulation of some kind of Islam that would be roughly analogous to Unitarian or Episcopalian Christianity that doesn't take the text seriously at all. And I don't mean any offense to any, but in any case, I think that's a generally accurate statement. And that's the kind of thing that we need to see. And there are several very courageous Muslim spokesmen who've called for that. Tashbi Sayyid of Muslim World Today is one of them, and there are some others who I think deserve all our full support, but we shouldn't have any illusions about this. Literalism is very deeply ingrained within Islam. It is the mainstream in Islam in a way that it never was in Christianity, and will be that much harder to eradicate as a result.
I think we're running short on time, and I know you're going to be out in front with your books. We do have copies of the book for sale, and for his autographing, and you are welcome to talk to him outside, sir. I am at time limits here inside, but do thank our guests again for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And we look forward to seeing you on a future occasion. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I know you're not a terrorist, my friend. I thought you